to The Pastor's Heart. My name is Dominic Steele and I'll be your host for this next 30 minutes. My guest today is Rhett Harris from EV Church on the central coast of New South Wales, and Rhett's been the ministry pastor there for probably 18 years or something, and so he has heaps to teach us about how to help deploy people in the ministry of the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so, Rhett, I want to say welcome along to you. It is great to have you here today. Now, mates, we're going to talk about ministry and strategy and how to approach all those kind of things in just a moment. But before we get to that, the pastor's heart, what's a journey that God has taken you through that's been complex and difficult, and he's walked you through it?
Yeah. Well, the clear one that comes to mind is my eldest daughter. We have 4 children, but my eldest daughter is now 19. But when I was at college, in second year, she was diagnosed as profoundly intellectually disabled. Now, very quickly, my wife and I and the extended kind of grandparents were aware the workload here would be massive. How would I do that, oversee that workload, make sure we as a family, nuclear family, stayed together, while still holding on to, I suppose, my hopes and plans to be church planter, lead pastor, rector, those sorts of things. And of course, the reality was I realised that wasn't possible. So you actually, having to wrestle with over many years, what are those deep values I hold that are kind of disturbing me, to do with my identity, that I have to work through, trusting God that he still has good plans for me, I'm still useful for the gospel, it can bear fruit, all those sorts of things. And I suppose over the years, that obviously in the early years I did have a public ministry. I'd preach and teach for about 9 or so years now. I have been overseeing this ministry area where we're a large church now. If you came to church, you wouldn't know that I exist. So how do you, process those sorts of identity and values issues?
I remember you coming out of theological college. You were working with me at the Anglican Department of Evangelism. You were one of the best bright young preachers of your year, and yet you've hardly got a public platform.
You wouldn't know I exist. That's right. So how do you process those changes and so forth? And I obviously I have many friends, colleagues, who they're dealing with anxiety, burnout issues. But we're going to have to ask questions about what's the nature of the external ministry in which we're working, but what are the internal things, the values we're holding that maybe aren't quite right, that actually cause problems for us. So I think they're the kind of real wrestling we need to do, because I think it does cause us a lot of trouble in our ministries unless we do trust God, work them through.
I want to take you back to 18 months ago, and it was the team pastoring conference up on the Central Coast, July 2016. You were running one of the elective seminars. There's about 20 or so people in the room, and I was one of the people who was attending the seminar. And I just remember you guys somehow up the front, somebody saying, rosters are contrary to the gospel. And I was thinking, how can I have credibility and allow this statement to go unchallenged? And I thought, I've been doing this for long enough, I'm going to stand and say this is wrong. And we had quite a tense moment in that seminar. Tell me about it from your perspective.
Well, the context was we were talking about mobilising the saints for ministry, right? So classic Ephesians 4 things, particularly how do we make that work in practice? And we were trying to advocate the strength of ministry teams or how much the outputs they can do at so many levels for the person individually, but also for the gospel. And we were then contrasting that with rosters. And I was presenting with an MTS or an intern called Dan Ford. He was working with me. We literally had come up with some hyperbole to literally create a reaction to see the contrast is massive between a team and a roster. So we did say things like, for instance, they're against unity, they're part of the judgment of God.
Rosters are part of the judgment of God, against unity.
They scatter people to do with tasks rather than gathering them people to work with gifts according to purpose. And I do visibly remember you upset.
What was it?
Oh, you were physically upset, and then of course verbally you came from the floor. So much so
You had to go and rescue
I
this
did.
young bloke.
Dan was wonderful, but I had to step up, and so then it was you and me. I'm up the
We
front
were
and
going
back.
toe to toe.
That's right. And well, I think that what I do remember then you said, which is quite typical. You said something like,
Might work for you blokes up on the Central
Yeah,
Coast, but
that-
in the real world...
"That's right, that's right. That EV must be this anomaly, and it's okay because we've got lots of time up there. But down here in Sydney, people are busy in the real world, and it's not going to work."
Yeah.
I had said I came
And
back.
I do think people are busier here.
Yeah, and may be the case,
Yeah.
although we have a lot of commuters up there,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we have to wrestle in that context too. I said I think that one of the challenges though is you ask too little of people, not too much.
Yep.
And that actually, if you really want to give people skin in the game, you want real people to free up time who are very busy. I appreciate absolutely busy. Then you actually need to really get them involved via teams.
And so just explain it to me first. What's the difference between a team and a roster?
Yeah, well, put simply, a team is the same group of people you serve with in all the time when you do a ministry. And it's based around you trying to achieve a certain purpose or outcome. And so they may actually, that team may function on a roster, if you like. That is, that team may be on every third week or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But it's based around output, a purpose. And so they would get together, they brainstorm, essentially they're driven by the why, what we're trying to do. And then they would work together, working out the how, the what, debrief, feedback, but they own it and they're moving forward. A roster is typically, as someone's on the list of names or an email goes out that you're to do a particular task. The supper roster after church where you bring along some biggies and cordial. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's literally just a roster is normally just a task. You're not working with the same people usually each time, and you're not actually caught up, driven by a purpose, working with the same people who may have various gifts to try and achieve an outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let me go to one of the questions that we've got. We've got a question from Steve Carlisle, and we'll put that up on the screen. And Steve has asked, my question is for you, Dominic. How did Rhett help you change your mind in that situation? If rostering is a not optimal practice, how did he migrate from that system to a different system? So I remember coming home, being persuaded. I mean, it was one of those conversations where you fight hard in the moment and then you reflect later and you think, actually, the other bloke might have been right.
Which I was fascinated because I must admit, from my point of view, I had no idea.
No.
I thought, did I persuade him at all? I don't know.
Anyway, we decided to start on the place where we were most likely to get a win. And we thought evenings is going to be simpler than mornings. There's more stronger views in the mornings about how to do things.
Yeah.
And so we thought we'll start first with the band in the evening and the sound desk and the pro presenter people in the evening. Then we'll move to the band and the pro presenter and the people in the morning. And then we'll tackle kind of supper and community and that kind of thing in the evening. And the last one to be approached, the holy grail of morning tea, the controversial one.
Yes, that's right.
And so the first thing we did was just to say, well, let's have 3 teams on Sunday night, being the platform team, the magnification team. So instead of having people on rosters as musicians, put them into teams. But this is the breakthrough moment. Put the pro presenter person in that team. Put the sound desk person in that team. And we now have, because we're videoing our church services, we have put the video operator in that team. And so it's and now we've got the setup people on a 3-week team as well, and but we started just with the platform team. Now, and then we made a rule that they had to have a debrief meeting. And there had to be a captain who organised the debrief meeting. Now, that is so much better than me trying to sit there thinking about what constructive criticism needs to be made, and then me going, why is that the case?
Well, for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, as a learning environment, to learn within a team from your peers where you collaborate essentially, or you conflict well, is just very powerful. So if you do it as the rector, there's a positional thing, and it's just it doesn't go great for relationally for them all the time. One, it creates a lot of extra work for you if you're speaking to all these things. Whereas if they own it as a team, and they in all their things they're collaborating. So even if someone comes up with an idea, they're always learning from each other. So one, it's a much better learning environment. You'll learn quicker. You'll get change quicker. It doesn't have the blockage point, which is you, the leader, having to do all these things, and it's not nowhere near as heavy-handed. And they'll probably say pretty much what you would have said anyway.
Well, that's the thing. If they have a debriefing meeting, and I mean, they're going to work out that the sound guy was late putting the volume up. They're going to work out that it would have been better if the slide guy missed the slides on the coming into the chorus on the second song. They're going to work those things out. They don't need me to tell them that.
Yeah. Now that's in the short term, but in the long term, a team actually will even know things better than you would anyway.
Absolutely.
Because they're specialists.
Yeah.
They think about that emotionally with their creative energy all the time. And so whatever you could reflect on about what they could improve on, in the short term, sure, you can contribute. But in the long term, that team of specialists, what they'll begin to know about their area of expertise is things that you don't even know what you don't know yet. And that's what begins to happen as you push into teams.
So I suppose that kind of thing started to happen when we started to get kind of the community team, and we set the goal of trying to, how on Sunday nights can we improve relationships with people? And so it stopped being a roster for supper and started being, here's a group of people with a captain who every 3 weeks are thinking about how do they make sure that we are doing community together.
Yeah.
And so pretty quickly couches started to appear. Yeah. and which I hadn't, I mean, it had been 7 years and I'd not put couches there.
But I take it there's a team with a captain.
Yeah, and they're thinking about that. Yeah.
But they've got a purpose. Their purpose is to make this community thing happen, right?
Yeah.
And then, but they come up with all these ideas.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's off your shoulders.
Absolutely. And so here's the thing. We got to the end of the year last year, and I'm just scrolling through on our church little Facebook community, and a thing comes up saying Eat, Feast night on the last Sunday night of the year before Christmas, and we had roast lamb dinner. You know?
Yes.
I never would have imposed that as a thing for supper.
Yeah.
And yet they just thought, no, we want to finish well, you know. And
but that's the output of teams.
Yeah.
That is, you know, as they develop and grow, and particularly if they're functional, what the kind of the output they'll do is things you would have never imagined nor thought they had the capacity to do months or years prior.
Now, we got a question from Steve Reimer. Does Rhett use rosters? In what way does he use rosters that are not contrary to the gospel? Now, so...
Hi, Steve.
And this is an issue that we have been wrestling with at the moment, because we've got now teams set up for community, for supper, teams set up for the platform. Often people are on, and we're doing everything on a 3-week cycle, you know. But often somebody's on a community team one week and a music team the next week, that kind of thing. And so some of our guys are wanting to stop using rosters altogether. And some of our guys are saying, but I can't tell who's doing what the following week. And so we're just on that tension, sitting on a precipice of, should we keep rostering people as well as having them in the team, or should we just kind of, as a central organisation, just completely let our hands go and let the teams do it? I'm imagining you've let your hands go a long time ago.
Oh, a long time ago. Well, the first thing, just to Steve, I should say, we still do. I understand. I don't.
You don't know.
I don't know. I don't
That's
know.
Great.
Honestly, we have hundreds of teams, and this is the problem. Honestly, I work in numerous teams. We're a team of teams, but if you ask me what's going on, I honestly don't know. It's so large, but we still do have rosters, I'm told.
Yeah. Right.
Somewhere and it particularly may be in the kids ministry where we've got a particular need, we're short, we may do something like that in the short term. But the thing, so obviously it's hyperbole. It's against the gospel. We were overstating for a point. But what tends to happen though is once you move to teams, what happens is I say it's a bit of a game of paper, scissors, rock. Right? That is, scissors always beats paper in that game, and teams are so much better than rosters. Once you begin to move to teams, what ends up happening is those areas of church that are running rosters actually start to lose, if I could put it like this. That is, people get drawn out of rosters into teams because they want to be part of a team. Right. Because then it also becomes a maturing vehicle. That is, that they're relationally growing, they enjoy the connection, all these sorts of things. And so actually it becomes harder and harder to actually continue to run a roster. Because why would you join a roster when you could be part of a team?
Now that's really clear in a sense on the platform stuff. Where else are you running teams? I mean, platform community, the Sunday kind of things. Yeah. Tell us about teams outside. And kids.
We run teams everywhere.
Yeah, but take me outside Sunday.
Obviously the youth department is all a team. Our children's ministry is a team. We might still have some rosters on. It's one-offs so there's a couple of qualifications on the rosters. I think where you do have one-offs, like you kind of said with Pep. So a lawnmower roster, for instance, or an MC. There's a couple of things you can do there though. You can still get them, say the lawnmowers or the MCs, to get together once a term and reflect on how they could make the grounds work better, or the MCing better function as a team. Or you did just like you did. You join them into a larger team in which they sit. Yeah. So then the debate is between whether you're part of a larger generalist team, so like a youth ministry team that runs the night and does all the different aspects, or you head more down the spectrum of a more specialist team that does, say, as you say, just a band, for instance. That's what they do particularly, just that particular role. And so you've got to wrestle with in leadership. How do you form up your teams?
Right. Now, Sylvanus Themes asked a question. He's asked, how do you balance building team consistency, loyalty and stability with urgent needs in other places? You've got to pull somebody out of a team because there's an urgent need for them to serve in a different place.
Yeah. Look, that, you're quite right, is a tension. It's not simple. And so we do actually have a bit of a complex recruiting policy, because you do have to give some protection for people where some ministries are more vulnerable for a particular number of reasons: the time, the leadership, where they're at in the churches, and the health of the church, versus some teams that might be particularly strong that can, if you like, draw people across to them. And so we manage that through our ministry teams, essentially, that do that. And even that gets managed at a high level, all the way up to the executive team, which actually does have to look at resourcing. And so we are always watching that. And in fact, I have ministry teams that are watching that in each of our congregations, that very issue all the time.
And I guess that one team over here is not accidentally treading on another team over their toes.
Yeah. So in our system, we talk about ministries, but you can't actually recruit someone into your team from another team.
Right.
See, so it actually when someone was to join a team, it does have to go through a high level leadership discussion.
Right.
Because you can't essentially be poaching people.
Right.
So poaching is a real issue.
Now, you're in a large church. Yeah. Let's go right back down to a church we've got a question from Leanie Jo McMillan, and she's saying, does this work for a small church of, say, 40 adults and 30 kids? It just seems beyond, I'm just looking at her question, it just seems beyond our capacity at the moment.
Yeah, it absolutely works, but you just got to remember you start small. So
help me think. What would I do?
Well,
40 people
to make a team of first thing, a team is just 2 people. Right? I think 2 people makes you a team.
Yep.
And 2 will just run better just having 2. But let's say you've got 40 people. Well, here you go. A live illustration for me was I was in charge of the night congregation.
Yep.
I've got 30 people that are our core they're running that night congregation that's now struggling.
Yep.
They also run the youth ministry, about 120, and they're running the kids ministry. But our capacity, we're under capacity with what we've got to do.
Yep.
So what do we do? Well, what we did was we created a 3-week cycle, A cycle, B cycle, C cycle, we divided people up into the key teams we needed to run, and essentially put people into 2 teams. So they'd have a week on in this team, a week on in this team, and then a week off.
Yep.
And that was essentially the cycle. So you're in serving every 2 weeks, and you got a 3rd week off. But literally, you had to break. It literally is a strategic plan. What have we got to get covered? How can we cover it? And you've got to prioritise, as you say. You may be forced to run some things as a roster just to keep them bare bones, but if you can form up a team in some area, you'll be better for it.
I think that's how we're playing it at the moment. That 2 weeks on, somebody might be on welcoming 1 week.
Yep.
They might be on bass guitar or somehow in the music team the next week, and then we're trying to give them the week off as the 3rd week.
But the essence is, I mean, I know church plants, they start with exactly that same number, and they're just running with volunteers, but they'll run in teams of 2. But it is, you've got to ask the question, yes, what are the key purposes you need to get done?
I've got a question here about ministry teams. This is from Jessica Brower, and she's asked, how have you, Rhett, seen ministry teams work well for the purpose of mission?
Yeah, ministry teams work... well, they bear fruit everywhere. It doesn't really matter what area, kids, youth, or a mission, or magnification, or wherever. So
think about, say you run a big carols thing. How do ministry teams come together to make the big carolsy type stuff work?
Okay, yes. Well, this is an area in which I'm actually not an expert.
Okay. Right.
So what you've got there is you've got our 2 big departments.
So just if you're watching from EV Church, Rhett doesn't know what he's talking about.
There's got to be people who will qualify. But what I understand is it's essentially that carols event sits under the mission department. And they would... but does link in with our membership department with connecting those people as they come in.
And I presume the magnification department, they've got to look after the platform as well.
Well, that's right. So you've got that's right. So mission are concerned with how the event goes, magnification running the platform, and membership are concerned with particularly that whole connection. And so you're right. They would sit down with heads, and then their teams would cover certain aspects.
Actually, let me give you one from us. If we're just thinking about whether or not it's a movie night for kids, or if it's the barbecue show at the end of a 3-day kids club that you do for parents to come to. Well, in the past, we used to give the kids pastor the job of running the whole program. It was his job to run the movie night, and his job to run the 3-day kids program. And so he then had to look for volunteer people from church to come both and do the barbecue at the end of the thing, and talk to be kind of on duty to talk to the guests who are coming. Whereas if we're actually able to say to our membership team, who actually think all the time about how to make people welcome at church, can you come and do your membership thing? And we just ask one of the membership teams to come and do their membership thing at the barbecue, or one of the morning church membership teams to come and do their membership thing at the movie night. Then we've got kids all watching the movie up the front, and then parents kind of having cheese and wine and whatever, talking, relaxing at the back.
And that's exactly what happens. So once you move to teams, your teams are normally formed up around the normally weekend services, say. But then, because they become special teams that know exactly what to do, as you just said, membership, when you run more of a one-off event,
they know how to do it better than...
Why would you go and try and create another one-off team to do this thing of all those people who don't know what they're doing? No, you lean upon, or you draw in those teams that run those events normally and get them to do it. And what happens, of course, is a much better event, because the specialist team comes in, and it's actually pretty light lifting for them because they do it all the time. They're so used to doing it.
I've got a question here about from Mark Lewis. And it's, actually, we'll go to Luther's question first. Luther Simons has asked, does EV use a skills gifts questionnaire form? How do you uncover opportunities as you get to know congregation members, discovering their gifts and passions as well as the needs that you see?
I mean, Luther, yes, both things have to be held together. So needs and gifts. So the form we use, there is an interview process that happens with people as they come into church life. They kind of do a membership course, We call it Startup. Then they join
Startup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not the one with 170 people in at the moment.
No, that's our life course. That's our kind of our Christian Explained course.
Right. This just freaked me out a couple of minutes ago. You said you've got 170 people
170
doing the
yeah.
How to Come to Christ course.
That's right.
Great news.
It's fantastic news.
Yeah.
Lots of great things going on. But there's mission. How's it run?
Yeah.
Through
Mission,
teams.
Yeah. Tell me how it's run. Yeah.
Oh well, there's a team of table talkers who are going to be ready there to kind of make sure their table works well.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously someone who's overseeing the whole setup.
Mm-hmm.
There's teams that oversee the setup of the night. There's teams that oversee the food for the night. There's a production team. So all of those different teams that are running essentially that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you run we have a Summerfest mission that runs for a week. There's teams that do that.
Mm-hmm.
So teams are everywhere that come together to bring these things off. But if you come back to Luther's kind of question, you've got, yes, we have needs, and so, but you're also asking questions of gifting, which happens through kind of they fill in a form, which they get to kind of have a sense of what their experience in gifting is, and then a conversation.
So how do they get these forms?
Oh, well, there's
one of your ministry people?
Yeah, so there's teams under me and in each of our congregations, and they're the people who go and give those forms out to the people as they're joining church at a certain point, and then have those conversations with people, and then go away with that information and balance gifting and the needs of church to try and place a person, and then go back to the person. Are they happy with that? There's a bit of to and fro, of course. It's not, we don't just try and put a square peg in a round hole. It's not like that. So it's relational. It's conversations that's then see a person placed in there, and even get a sense of how they're going. And of course, their team leaders would be informed about you've got the person joining you, and then they would bring them on board well.
And we want to give a shout out to this conference. You've got Team Pastoring.
We have Team Pastoring the 4th to the 6th of July.
And look, I can just say that was the conference where they had the elective, where you and I had that ding dong. Right. And I found it so super helpful. And I must say the publicity was terrible in terms of I couldn't find the website, but I hope it's got better when I've seen something.
We need to get a team over that, I reckon. But anyway,
you need a website team.
We need
as quickly as possible.
We do over that one
because actually it's a super busy month. There's the GAFCON thing on for some people. There's the oxygen thing on for some people, but I actually think the most helpful conference you can go to out of those three in terms of how to grow the ministry of Jesus that you're doing at the moment would be the Team Pastoring Conference. And so I want to say well worth attending. We will be taking our whole team up there, and I won't tell you which hotel we're going to stay at because we haven't booked yet.
Well, this year we're actually focusing on what we call the volunteer revolution.
Yeah.
That is, how do we, increase the number of volunteers, or of the brethren, our brothers and sisters in Christ, who are serving in a way that's really fruitful for the kingdom, but also fruitful for them. Because I suppose I'd want to advocate that teams are really powerful for seeing people mature as they bump up shoulder to shoulder, as they, as the scriptures are infused in that work all the time.
Yeah,
are powerful.
Hey, Rhett, thanks very much for coming in.
Been a real privilege.
Rhett Harris has been my guest on The Pastor's Heart, and look, next week I hope you can join us at the same time, 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. If you go to our Facebook page, you'll be able to ask questions in advance, and that's really helpful. We'll have as a guest next week Sandy Galea, and Sandy is to Ray Galea, and so together they lead the church up at Rudy Hill, and we're going to be talking about how you help children walk through the difficult grief process. Maybe a parent die, a teacher die, an auntie, an uncle, and so I hope you'll join us next week on The Pastor's Heart.